Today I'm going to be making a traditional Catalan seafood stew. So let's get started by prepping our seafood. Here I've got about 1 kilo of cod, but you could use any sort of fish that you want. I'm going to cut off the uneven pieces and save that for later. And the rest of it I'm going to cut into single serving fillets. I got about 6 out of mine. Next I've got about half 1 kilo of shrimp here. I'm going to go ahead and set aside about 10 or 12 of those and devein them. And the rest I'm just going to deshell and hold on to those shells. Next I've got about 200 grams of squid. It's already cut into pieces, but I'm going to cut it a little bit smaller, about 1 centimeter squares. Now we're going to get started on a fish stock. So into a saucepan, let's throw that uneven cut of fish, along with our shrimp shells and our squid. I've got a half an onion here, as well as some parsley. And I'm just going to cover that all up with about 1 liter of water. Crack in some freshly ground black pepper. Bring that to a boil. Reduce it down to a simmer, and we can skim off any nastiness that floats to the top. Cover that guy up and let it go for at least 20 minutes until it develops some really nice flavor. Now I'm going to get some olive oil going over medium heat in a large pan. And I'm going to go ahead and cube up a potato. I cut mine into 1 centimeter cubes. Throw them into the pan and brown them on all sides. We don't really need to finish cooking them here because we'll throw them back into the soup later on, but just make sure they've got some nice color on them. When they're done, remove them off to the side. And into the same oil, I'm going to throw the rest of our squid. Saute that until it gets a little bit of color on it and starts curling up. At which point we can throw in those shrimp and cook those until the shells turn red. Now we'll take the other half of that onion and dice it up. And toss that in the same oil. Saute that until it's translucent. And then I'm going to add in some peeled garlic. No need to chop it up because we're going to blend this later, so go ahead and throw them in whole. Nice and easy. Now I'm going to chop up 4 tomatoes and puree them in a food processor. This will be a little fresher tasting than canned tomatoes, but feel free to use the canned stuff if you want. Add those guys in and mix them thoroughly. And once they start bubbling, we can add in a couple tablespoons of paprika and about 150 milliliters of wine. That's up to the first fin. Stir that on in. Then we'll add in a diced up green pepper. The chefy way to do it is to chop off the ends and just work on the center section at first. But no food waste here. We're gonna dice up those end caps as well. And the stem pops right on out. It's pretty cool. Dump those guys in and let the whole thing cook together a little bit. Next up, let's throw a handful of toasted almonds into a food processor. We also want a few slices of toasted bread. I'm using a basic baguette here and toasting them in a little bit of oil. And about a handful of parsley. Throw that all in. And give it a blitz until a fine powder forms. And now directly into there, we're going to add in our stewed vegetables. and blend it until a puree forms. Now let's dump that back into the pan. Now we can go ahead and add in our fish stock. Use a strainer so you can make sure to get all that liquid. Go ahead and stir it on in. Now let's dump back in our potatoes. Cover up the pan, and let's cook those for about 10 to 15 minutes until they're cooked through. Now we can go in with our fish fillets. As well as our shrimp. And our squid. Make sure your pan isn't overflowing, and you can let that go for another 10 minutes until the fish is cooked. In the meantime, let's make an alioli, which can be two things. It can be either a puree of garlic and oil, or it can be a garlic mayonnaise. I'm opting for the second, so let's start by juicing a lemon. Add in 5 cloves of garlic, 2 eggs, and a few pinches of salt. Now let's add in about 250 milliliters of olive oil. And with a stick blender, go ahead and blend that until it all comes together. You may have to adjust the ratio by adding either more eggs or more oil, but the stick blender makes everything come together a lot easier than whisking. I need a haircut. Wow. So there's not much to say besides the fact that it tastes like the sea. Everything in there is fresh. You got the seafood that's in there, you've got the parsley. The tomatoes really brighten things up because they didn't cook for too long. Those, along with the parsley and the wine, really balance out the slight brine from the seafood. The alioli is really garlic forward. It creates this sort of punch that cuts through all the other flavors that are in there. And the almonds are an interesting addition. They don't really add much flavor-wise, but in terms of texture, they really kind of thicken up the soup. Maybe I didn't grind them fine enough, but they add a little something to chew on while you're eating this. But all in all, this just screams summer to me. You may be locked up indefinitely for a while. Maybe this will help you get a little summer in your life for the time being. See you next time. Cheers.